Um, do you think that everyone is cut out to create a course? I mean, you obviously need to. I mean, there's different ways of presenting a course, obviously, but a lot of times today, it's video. Not everybody likes being on video, or maybe is suited to be on video or speaking to an audience. How do you feel about that?
I think it's less about the person delivering it and it's more about the student transformation
Hmm.
and what's required for that transformation. Like, as an example, I did an immigration course, so like immigration law,
Hmm.
and we helped people get a visa. So people abroad, we help them get. It's like this pathway to get a visa and live in the U.S.
Right.
It's called the O-1. It's an extraordinary person's visa, and that program was like 95% written. Like, there
Mm.
was barely any video content because there wasn't. It was like they just needed tasks to do. Right. There, of course, there's a bit of why you have to pull in why this is important, why this step is important, why to not skip this step, right? You want to involve them in the why. But for the most part, the students who were taking it, who were trying to get that transformation of being someone abroad to someone living in the United States via this visa, which is the vehicle, they just needed someone to tell them what the heck to do,
Hmm.
right? They were already involved. They already wanted it bad enough. And a lot of them even outsourced a lot of the course to, their assistant because it was gathering documentation and the like. So I think as far as showing up on video and like, is everybody cut out for it? I think it's less about if you're cut out for it. It's more about what do your students need. And if they need
Hmm.
you to show up on video, well, then you need to become the person who can rock on video.
Hmm.
And
But
that's just
also,
mindset work, that's internal work, that's neurolinguistic programming. Like, go talk to an NLP practitioner, redo your story around how you're showing up on video and what it means to show up on video. And if, it's like Tony Robbins always says, if I turn me into we, everything changes.
hmm
And so if we stop thinking about like, oh my gosh, I'm on video. Oh my gosh, how does my hair look on video? Oh my gosh, like, am I going to be engaging or captivating on video? Instead, just think about what do my students really need me to like verbally demonstrate this with enthusiasm and energy. If you put it on them, then it's like, oh, okay, yeah,
hmm
I'm going to figure it out and show up on video.
but also, I mean, it kind of takes off a little bit of a burden to feel like you have to have a video or anything
Absolutely.
like, because you obviously don't, and that's,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get hung up on that because that's what they see. Every course they join is video of some kind usually. But you just told us that you don't really have to. It obviously depends on what you're teaching the audience and all that stuff, but still.
And as a podcast host, right? Like,
Hmm.
and your listeners are probably all podcast listeners. One of the biggest trends I'm seeing right now is audio only programs.
Hmm.
So it's like you sign up for the course and you get a private podcast feed access. My favorite tool for this
Right.
is Hello Audio. They can do this like in one click. It's pretty brilliant. If you want to build a podcast course, I recommend you check them out. But yeah, I mean it's amazing, especially if you have a podcast and your listeners are all podcast listeners. You can make your whole program audio only with a workbook and you're
Hmm.
done. And that means you never have to like, at least for us women, we're like, oh, I gotta do my makeup, I gotta do my hair, what am I wearing? It's like a whole thing. I know you guys care less about it. At
Well,
least
my hair
I
is
can.
pretty pretty okay.
Pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that took you a long time this morning, huh?
Oh yeah, definitely. I spent a
Um,
couple of minutes.
but
uh,
yeah, that's another big hot trend right now.
mhm. Yeah, it's good to
Mhm.
see that you can do it a different kind of ways. Definitely. But how do we? I mean, obviously, we need to. If, when we started creating course, outlining it is probably the best way to start with coming up with the idea of course. Do you have any
Yeah.
tips on that? Is that like just a brain dump, or how does that look?
Uh, it often starts that way. Like, usually my clients come to me and they're like, here's my Google Doc. and it's like a 20-page Google Doc of lots of random thoughts that are not in the right place at all. That some of them need to go in the course, some of them should definitely not be in the course. Many people come to me with a Google Doc that I'm like, there's 3 courses inside of this one Google Doc,
Hmm.
right? So, I think a rookie mistake is to go and build your course, the product first. First, you need to build the offer,
Hmm.
right? And like the offer is, what's the promise of the program? What's the step-by-step method you're taking them through? What's your proprietary method that's so enticing that they think there's no other way to get to this result
Hmm.
except to use your method, right? It's about what's the price, what are the bonuses. It's really building out the offer, because when you're building a course, the question you need to keep asking yourself is, what do I want my students to be able to do as a result of this course, as a result of this module, as a result of this lesson, as a result of this workbook, as a result, like, what do you want them to be able to do as a result?
Hmm.
And there are some, I mean, variations of that, right? Who do you want them to be as a result of taking this? And what habits do you want them to install as a result of doing this? But it's always, the first one that comes to mind is, what do you want them to be able to do? Because the results come through action.
Hmm.
So when you're mapping out your program, first you start with the offer. And when you really nail that main promise, then you start chunking it into modules, which to me are like 1 hour blocks. And then you break that module into 5 to 15 minute lessons.
Hmm.
So if we're thinking about a launching course, for example, um, like, you tell me, what do you think the first step is someone needs to take when it comes to launching something new for the first time?
They definitely need to work on the messaging. That's like
Okay,
the foundation of everything, I think.
great. So
Yeah.
that's maybe that's one module, is you
Hmm.
have an hour of content on messaging, but you chunk it down into 5 to 15 minute sections. So maybe
Hmm.
there's a lesson on your vehicle, right? Maybe there's a lesson on pain points. There's a lesson on, what's on the other side of this problem. So you're starting to create that before and after picture for them in the messaging of what's before your program, what's after your program. But that's how I like to think of it in my brain, is
Hmm.
what's the big result? What are the smaller results, the steps on the path to that big result? And then how do we chunk those up into really bite size, almost binge worthy components?
Yeah. So would you say that that you would start out with, what is the transformation that people would get from going through this course? That's like, okay, that's like the headline of all of
Mm-hmm.
this. And then
Mm-hmm.
you kind of, well, I will teach them how to get that transformation with using my framework, my method, whatever, and then you kind of bite-sized everything from there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Sounds like a
And some
reasonable way to do it. Yeah.
right? Yeah. And some programs, kind of the caveat to that, I have done, I actually do quite a few of these choose your own adventure programs.
Hmm.
So rather than just like, here, step one, step two, step three, step four, like you have to do all these steps in this order. It's almost like a menu.
Yeah.
So to get to, like, launching is another easy example. There's a challenge launch, there's a webinar launch, there's a beta launch, there's a waitlist launch. And so it's, instead of them going all the way through step by step, they just pick which one they want to do and they go do that.
Yeah. It would make sense to, hey, listen, you got to do all of these different kind of launches, and then you'll understand what they were going on.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
and I love that approach as well. I mean, business by design with James Wedmore, and that's basically his type of course, is just a big pile of resources basically. So you take whatever you kind of need at the moment, at the stage where you're in your business, and you use that instead of going through every single thing like from A to C, which wouldn't kind
Yes.
of work.
Yes. I mean, I've taken his program too, and it's very much, think of it like an encyclopedia
Hmm.
and less of like a course,
Yeah.
because it's more like you have to have the wherewithal to know, this is what I need right now. Like, this is my next step. And then you go in there and he helps you figure out how to take that step. But
Hmm.
you have to be self directed enough to know, in order to get to this goal, right, for this quarter, here's what I need to do to get there. Whether that's,
Hmm.
you know, launch a new lead magnet, do ads, have a launch, work on your messaging, etc. You have to be able to pinpoint your own problem so that you can then go and use the right resource. And I think that's why a lot of people get overwhelmed with like launching courses because they don't know where to start. It's like all these resources are great, but like where the heck do I start? And he does a pretty good job breaking down like, if you have this problem, do this. If you have this problem, do this, right?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.